Ryan Mertz. My motivation for going to law school was watching the music sharing service Napster get sued out of existence. As an avid music lover and Napster user, I was convinced that copyright law was not keeping up with technology, and I wanted to be a part of fixing that. But it was taking up DJing in law school, studying the history of musical movements to become a better DJ, and a Pachakacha talk in 2013 that made me realize that copyright law is fundamentally flawed. Copyright and the myth of originality disrupt the creative process, and I no longer believe in reforming copyright, but ending it. What I learned digging through records is that most musicians start with repurposing melodies, reworking someone else's song, or in modern times, sampling older recordings to reassemble into new songs. New genres of music are often responses to or combinations of existing genres of music. Musical progress builds on the history that came before it. Copyright law disrupts that process through the myth of originality, the fable that one person in the creative chain can claim ultimate ownership of the influences that came before them and dictate how and who can use that song going forward. The more copyright law expands, the more the creative process is put at risk. And to show you how this works, I'm going to tell you the story of why the director of the movie Cruel Intentions had to pay a large sum of money to use the song Bittersweet Symphony in the movie's final scene. Bittersweet Symphony was written by a group called The Verve, but all the money spent to use the song in that film went to the Rolling Stones business manager. Many of you will know the Bittersweet Symphony's iconic strings, which sound like this. But the history of this song starts in the 1800s with an old black spiritual called This May Be the Last Time. In 1955, the Staple Singers recorded a gospel version of This May Be the Last Time, and their version sounds like this.
This may be the last time, maybe the last time I don't know.
In 1965, the Rolling Stones heard the Staple Singers version and turned it into The Last Time, a song about a man threatening to leave a woman. It sounds like this.
This could be the last time, maybe the last time I don't know.
Sounds familiar, right? Well, that's because Keith Richards admits that he was actually playing along with the Staple Singers recording when he wrote The Last Time. When asked about the songwriting process for The Last Time, Richards, pictured there, says you don't go out of your way to lift songs, but what you play is eventually the product of what you've heard before. And I actually agree with Keith on this point. This is how all major musical movements, dub, blues, jazz, hip-hop, and rock and roll, have developed and grown over time. Individuals take what they have heard before and stylize it into something that is all their own. The Beatles, Ray Charles, Louis Armstrong, and Bob Marley all started out copying and modifying other people's music. And that's some of the people there. I got ahead of myself. Keith Richards was asked about the similarities between his song and the old spiritual, and he said, the last time was basically readapting a traditional gospel song that had been sung by the Staple Singers, but luckily, the song itself goes back into the mists of time. Keith is admitting he would have gotten sued today for doing what he did back then. And here's where the introduction of copyright law into the music industry changes everything. By claiming the copyright for their song, the Stones gain control of the same creative process they used to copy the Staple Singers. They use this control to punish the Verve for doing exactly what Keith did. But some of you may be thinking the Stones version of The Last Time doesn't sound like Bittersweet Symphony. And that's because the Verve didn't sample the original Stones recording. They sampled an orchestral arrangement of the Stones song that sounds like this. That string part was independently written by David Whittaker and performed by the Andrew Oldham Orchestra. But David Whittaker and Andrew Oldham don't own the copyright to this orchestral version. Rolling Stones manager Alan Klein does. And in 1997, he successfully sued the Verve for using that iconic sample in Bittersweet Symphony, giving Klein ownership of the Verve song entirely. This meant that in order for Cruel Intentions director Richard Kumble to use Bittersweet Symphony, the song he specifically heard in his head when writing the last scene of his movie, he had to pay Alan Klein a very large sum of money. A businessman who did not create anything was controlling the creative process, all thanks to copyright. Now, copyright law is not just negatively affecting professionals, it is also hurting amateurs trying to share their own musical creation. In recent years, online media sharing services like YouTube and SoundCloud have started scanning uploads, checking the sound wave structure of the audio, and automatically pulling down files that contain even snippets of copyrighted music. This type of copyright interference may only get worse. Last year, Marvin Gaye's family successfully sued Robin Thicke and Pharrell not for using an actual Marvin Gaye sample, but because the vibe of the song, Blurred Lines, was too similar to Marvin's song, Got to Give It Up. And while Pharrell is appealing this decision, if the ruling stands, copyright law and technology will be combined and used by record labels and lawyers to exert even more control, imposing a chilling effect on creativity. Songwriting will not be an iterative process, it will be one driven by money and lawsuits. Creative works will become harder to share online. I came to Champaign thinking that copyright needed reforming, and in 2013 I heard Nina Paley present at Pachaka Chop 14, urging people to not let copyright censor the creative process. Give it up for Nina. It was hearing that at that moment, combined with the outrageous musical examples I found as a DJ, that made me realize copyright needs to be abolished, not reformed. So thank you, Nina, for being the light bulb above my head. We all need to abandon the myth that individuals create art independently from their influences. We need to reject the idea that copyright should give an individual control of creativity, because only by realizing that art is a collective process can creativity continue to thrive in the modern world. To use Nina Paley's words without her permission, make art, not laws. Thank you.